Thanks very much for joining us here in Salvador. We are in Brazil, in the state of Bahia, and we have a big pleasure to receive João Bosco Monte, who is the president of Brazil Africa Institute, that contribute for the organization of the meeting here that is preparing the 9th edition of African Diaspora Congress that is going to be in Lome, in Togo, and we have a big pleasure to have you here, sir. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure being here, and I think it's an opportunity to explain and to see how we can collaborate and the importance of the diaspora in Brazil, but not only in Brazil, but in the Americas.
Yeah, when we are talking about America, we also talk about Brazil, and in Brazil, and especially in the state of Bahia, there is a lot of African people. Maybe we can say that it's the more bigger state that have the most African here in America. So is it the reason why you decide to support the organization of this event?
When we got the invitation from the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Brazil to join forces to organize this initiative, my answer was yes, immediately, because we think that the diaspora has an important role in connecting Brazil itself with Africa, but also other regions of the world. We've been discussing among ourselves, but also with other people, how is the importance of bringing together Africa and Brazil. In the diaspora, it's a very important issue that we need to link with business, private sector, civil society, and so on. And that's why we decided to jump in this initiative, which is very timely. And yes, Salvador of Bahia is the city where we see very straight link with Africa. Sometimes when I bring some Africans to Bahia and to Salvador itself, they say, I'm just feeling like home, because this is very connected, it's very linked. And I understand the moment is very crucial and appropriate for us to discuss the way that the diaspora can contribute for this engagement between Africa, the continent itself, but also with the Americas.
So we have heard this morning, African people in Brazil are facing a lot of challenges, you know, according to their origin, according to the history of Brazil. So how are you looking them today? Are you looking them to them like they should be more connected to Africa or more connected to Brazil? Because when Africa come here to talk with the diaspora is to bring them to be connected to Africa and to help to the transformation or development of Africa. So what is your point according to this perspective?
I think what we have in front of us is a big picture that we need to see clear. I keep saying to my African brothers that we should know more about Brazil. When I go to Africa, and I've been visiting Africa since 2012, I've visited already more than 40 African countries, and every time when I go to Africa, I say to my friends, my brothers, the people that I have involvement, to very specifically, come to Brazil and let us know who you are. So it's very important for us, for Brazilians, to understand what is the root, what is the link that we have with the continent. And this kind of initiative, I understand the diaspora, the conference, is a moment that we can use in a very appropriate direction to know each other. Although Brazil is connected with Africa, we don't know a lot of about the continent. And some Brazilians, I say this very sadly, we think that Africa is one single space, which is not true. We need to respect the individuality of each country, each region of the continent, and we should understand and know more about the assets and the possibility of engagement. And there is one aspect that I want to raise, which is the economic development. What kind of initiatives we can bring from Brazil that can be used in the Africa context? If you look back to Brazil 4 decades ago, you see so many similarities with what you see in some African countries. I'm talking about energy, I'm talking about agriculture, I'm talking about ICT, artificial intelligence. If Brazil could change its image internally, but also outside, in 4 decades, is it possible to do the same thing in some African countries? My answer is yes, but we need to respect the singularity of each country. It's not a matter of unplug here in Brazil and plug in Africa. But I see very clear that what we are doing in the past 20 years, it's very important. And we need to thank President Lula for what he said at the beginning of his first government in 2003. At the very initial speech, he said, Africa would be a priority for my government. And we need to wait, we need to be patient to see the result. The result that we see now is not the result that we want to see, but we need to work together. We need to put our hands together to see results in a very pragmatic way. This conference, the conference of the diaspora, I'm very sure that is a piece of this big puzzle to understand the connection, the way that we are involved, but more than that, how we can see good and tangible results in the future.
Some people think that Brazil can, can take advantage of the fact that he has a lot of black community in the country to make a soft power in Africa. So, do you think about that perspective?
Well, soft power is something that everybody should use appropriately. When you go to Africa, you have some different countries. Brazil cannot go to Africa and do what we want to do, what we do here, there. Again, we need to respect the individuality of each country. But of course, the symbolic connection that Brazil has with Africa can be used in our favor. When I say our favor, I mean both directions. If you look to the creative industry, for instance, we are in Bahia. We are in the heart of Africa in Brazil. If we look to our gastronomy, if we look to our music, we have so many ways to link that we cannot move. We cannot be blind. Africa also gave to us many possibilities, but also gave ways to take advantage of it. Brazilian companies, Brazilian civil society, Brazilian government could combine efforts and initiative with African society, African government, African private sector. And I understand this is a two-way movement. It should be a win-win situation. And some organizations like the Brazil Africa Institute, we are very, let's say, pragmatic in terms of combining efforts, because the limitation of resources is something that we should consider. We don't have resources for everything. But how can we use in a very, let's say, direct movement the resources that we have in order to bring results? Results for government, results for the community, but also results for the people. What we are doing now in these 20 years since the beginning of the government of President Lula is recreate the narrative, connection between ourselves, but also look into the future and how we can boost the movement to bring good results for ourselves.
There's a lot of movement actually in Africa. Africa is facing a world geopolitics, as we can see in the relationship between Africa and Russia, or the relationship between Africa and China or Turkish. So what is the kind of relation that Brazil wants to set up today with Africa? Is it the kind that we can see with Russia, or with Turkish, or with America?
Well, your question is very timely. We are different. We cannot put ourselves, Brazil, combine and compare with the guys that you just mentioned. Russia, Turkey, Japan, Singapore, some European countries, US. They have their own agendas. We need to respect, and we need to see what they want to do. It's what they want to do.
And we today are asking ourselves the question to know what is what is the target of Brazil in his relationship with Africa today?
Yeah, I come to the point that you just mentioned, but I need to see if you look to Turkey. Turkey in 2012, I give a number. it has 3 flights, 3 cities covered by Turkish airline. Just 2 cities in 2012. Now, 2024, after 12 years, 54 cities in Africa has flights coming from Turkey. So the president of Turkey visited the continent last year 4 times. So there is a direct way to do this. They have investment. If you go to China, in few days, some head of states from Africa will join forces to be in Beijing to meet the president of China. President Biden received some African presidents in Washington last year. We have many ways to see how countries are linked with Africa, which is okay. China, US, Turkey. But what's the difference between Brazil and these other countries? For me, the answer is very clear. Visiting African countries, speak with people, having some conversation, I see a very clear connection between Brazil and Africa. If you ask one authority from Africa, who you want who you prefer to work with, these guys or Brazil? Of course, they have sometimes a big check. They can give more evidences of financial contribution, but there is a link because of our connection, because of our roots with Africa. So they prefer doing things with Brazil. But also, I'm just repeating myself. I said that 40 years ago, Brazil changed dramatically. If you look to agriculture, for example, what country could contribute with Africa rather than Brazil, better than Brazil? No one. If you look back to Brazil 40 years ago, Brazil used to be one of the importer of crops, food, and Brazil now is one of the biggest producers of food in the world. The agricultural transformation that we had in Brazil can be deployed in the Africa context. My answer is totally easy, yes. And I've seen this. We see some initiatives that Brazil can be deployed in the African continent. How long this will take? It depends on us, depends on the country, depends on the government. But the answer is Brazil can be a good friend of Africa because we have technology. Is it possible to transfer technology? Yes, and we are doing this. The Brazilian Cooperation Agency, since maybe 15 years, is bringing some technicians, some technical assistance to Africa. This is not the whole answer, but it's part of it. Our contribution at the Brazil Africa Institute is very unique in terms of education and capacity building. As we speak, we have in Brazil some Africans that are receiving technical training in the cassava value chain industry. Nigeria, Togo, Benin, many African countries in the west part of the continent produce cassava, but there is no value addition. In Bahia, the state of Bahia is one of the biggest producers of cassava, and they do add value to the production. Is it possible to transform? Yes, but we need to put our hands together in terms of efforts and see each one of us having its own capacity. Together we can have a good cooperation. And South-South cooperation, for me, is fundamental. These countries that you just mentioned, I don't want to compare. They have their own agenda, but Brazil has an agenda of South-South cooperation, which is absolutely necessary.
And Brazil is acting in Africa, helping people transform some communities with a lot of projects. And I just want now I would like us now to talk about the next event that is coming. Is Brazil Africa Forum that is going to be organized, and what is going to be the particularity of the edition of this year, especially, and when that edition is going to be
Yeah, the Brazil Africa Forum is our flagship. We are doing this for 11 years. Actually, 2024 will be the 12th edition of the Brazil Africa Forum, and every year we select one specific topic to be discussed in October 14 and 15 in São Paulo. The Brazil-Africa Institute will receive head of states, private sector, civil society, diplomats, government agents, multilateral organizations as well, to discuss one important and unique theme, which is infrastructure, financial support for infrastructure, how we can finance, how can we develop initiative to have infrastructure as an agenda. But when you talk about infrastructure, you have a very wide agenda. You can talk about agriculture, you can talk about health, you can talk about sanitation, PPP, and so on. These will be the topics that we want to bring to the conversation. But although the theme or the event is related to Brazil and Africa, we see in the next days a very important participation of other countries. Not only Brazil, not only Africa, but countries from South America, countries from Europe, Asia, the Middle East. They will come to São Paulo to participate in the next edition of the Brazil-Africa Forum. And I understand will be very important because one very unique moment. Remember, the African Union now is part of the G20. And one month after the forum, we did this with a very important purpose. We have the G20 meeting in Rio de Janeiro, and the African Union will be in Brazil debuting its participation in the G20. So we'll discuss this also during the Brazil-Africa Forum, and this will be also announced during our event, what's going to happen during the G20 in November.
So how many delegations from Africa are you expecting for that event?
From our previous experience, show us that we may have around 50 delegations from different parts of the world. Africa, of course, will lead. Last year we had 32 African delegations come from different parts of the continent. And this year we think that will be a massive participation. That's what we expect.
Also, to end this exchange, so what can you tell us about the action of Brazil-Africa Institute since the beginning of this year? We are going to, December is in 2 months, so we can start to ask ourselves what happened during the year. So, can you tell us about the activities of Brazil African Institute from the beginning of this year?
Yeah. Since 2012, when we started our initiatives, we decided to have 3 different ways to promote this interaction, the proximity between Brazil and Africa. That's the genesis of the Institute. How good experiences from Brazil can be presented to Africa, and how African movements can be also related to Brazil. And we have 3 initiatives. One is related to studies, research, analysis. We go to the field and we have a specific data, information, and we distribute to people among our community. The second topic, or the second part of this combination of efforts of the Institute is related to capacity building. We started a ambitious program. It was launched during the annual meeting of African Union in Addis Ababa when President Lula came in February. We launched the ambitious target of for capacity building for 1,000 African kids, 2004-2025. We started already. This is something that we are very happy. And the third thing is related to events. We are coming now to the 12th edition of the Brazil-Africa Forum. One event that we understand is very important, like this event as well, the Diaspora. So we are finalizing the year in 3 years. In 3 months, we have the end of 2024. We still have other things that we'll do. G20 will be another moment that the Brazil-Africa Institute will participate. And I see the results as something very important for the connection of the 2 sides, Brazil, Africa, and also other regions.
João Bosco-Monte, thanks very much to accord us this conversation.
It was a big pleasure, and I see the moment that we have very important for the link between the two sides of the Atlantic.
All right, thank you very much for according us this intervention. We will stay here in Bahia, El Salvador, in Brazil, and we'll talk with more personality here just to understand how Brazil-African relations also are going today, as the state of Bahia is launching this conference of Africa Diaspora in America. Thanks very much.